Welcome to the Art of Lifting podcast. Today I am joined by Natalie Richards. Did you want to just introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. What's up, guys? My name is Natalie. I'm a 57 kilo world champion, Sheffield competitor, and then powerlifting and nutrition coach.
Thank you for that. So first question I ask everyone is, how did you get into powerlifting in the first place?
So I started just like going to the gym with a friend who forced me, which I feel like is like such a common introduction story. I don't want to do it. I don't want to go anywhere, but your friend forces you to go. So my friend back in the day, Josh, was like, hey, you should come lift, stop running, have some fun. Because I used to do a lot of running in high school and beginning of my college years. I'd do a ton of distance running and felt super burnt out from it. So he took me to the gym, started lifting weights, said, hey, you should, lift weights with other people. So I signed up for a meet. And then from there, it just kind of flowed.
Nice. So you've actually, I didn't realize how long you've been in the sport for. So you've been in the sport since 2019, which I feel like these days is quite rare that people have been in the sport for that long. So you started as a junior, and obviously you're 2 years out of juniors now. So you're still young, still like,
Thank you.
Well, you're a year older than me, so I'm going to call you young.
I'm dead. Thank you.
So your first meet was what, November 2019? Yeah. A question I like to ask people. So I would say you got to a high level pretty quickly. Did you think you were going to be good at this kind of from the get-go, or is it something where somewhere along the line you realized, oh wait, no, I'm actually really good at this, like I could take this to a really competitive level?
I think that it wasn't necessarily me thinking like, man, I think I'm going to be great at this. It was more me thinking, wow, I actually love this. Like this was like the first, I would say, like passion I've had. And I've done wide variety of sports. I've been good at some, not so good at others. And I've done like gymnastics, softball, volleyball, track, like a ton of sports growing up. And powerlifting was the first one where I like fell in love with it, and where I felt like I could like unleash like all of my potential in it. And I think that made the difference versus me waking up one day and thinking, wow, like I feel super strong. It was more me saying, hey, I love this. I want to just keep doing it.
Yeah. We'll kind of go into that side of it a little bit after I just asked you about your background before that. So was your main background then long distance running?
Yeah. I would say like the first couple of years before I started training, like lifting. Yeah. I was out here running like, I don't know, 40, 50 miles a week, which is too many miles. Like I did gymnastics for, I can't remember how long. That was like my first sport from like 4 years old. And did softball, and then high school I did track primarily. So that was sprinting, and I'm super short, but I did hurdles. I was not great at it, obviously. So I did that, and then I went to college and started doing distance running, and then I got burnt out and wanted to do something else. So yeah.
That makes more sense. I was going to say, because I feel like long distance running doesn't usually have a great carryover into strength sports as much, but the sprinting and all of the other areas definitely make sense. Yeah. So kind of jumping back to what you said about it being like kind of like your passion, right? You love the sport so much, you just want to keep going with it. So you've recently been out with an injury. So you had to withdraw from Worlds 2024. You won in 2023, obviously then to Sheffield early 2024. And then was it a back injury? Am I right in thinking that?
Yeah, back injury.
Yeah, so that meant withdrawing from Worlds. So during your period in the sport as a whole, have you ever struggled with kind of burnout? I wondered if maybe like linking it in with your injury, that you've had a long road to rehabbing, right? Like a lot of people would quit in that time. Yeah. But is it the fact that you're driven to be competitive, or is it just that you just generally love this sport so much, like you just want to kind of get back to it? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So going back to like last year, I hurt my back and had to withdraw. But I think like the level of burnout that I had like the month before Worlds, like 2 months leading into Worlds, like whenever I first injured it, those 2 months were the absolute worst ever with burnout and with injury, because I felt like I was going to a world championship at my weakest, which is really, really hard mentally. And then 2, I felt like I had pushed really, really hard in Sheffield, and that just burnt me out a ton too. So like, I think those 2 months leading into the decision of withdrawing from Worlds last year was harder with burnout than it is right now, even though I've been rehabbing my back for almost, I don't know, it's almost been a year. It's kind of getting close to that. Like back, another back injury followed by hip flexor injury, and now I finally feel like maybe I can build some momentum before Worlds of this year, if all goes to plan. But like, it's I feel like you have to do it in baby steps. Like if I like looked last year, let's say the last whatever 6 months it's been, like rehabbing stuff, if I like put this expectation on myself that I have to be better by a certain amount of time, or I need to be back at my peak strength, I think that would create a lot more burnout than what I've had. Whereas when I withdrew from Worlds, I could kind of take a step back from those expectations and foreseeing progression, and had a chance to actually like do stuff that I enjoyed, do some more like rehabby things, you know, explore things that weren't just top end strength. And that allowed me not to get super, super burnt out. And I knew that eventually I would be in a better mindset to come back, peak, and be in that more competitive state. But I just needed time to literally rehab my body and like kind of take a mental break as well.
Yeah, so I do think sometimes with injury, so I had quite a bad back injury, like literally as like 2020, like COVID came. So thankfully gyms shut, so I couldn't push through it anyway, and I had no choice but to rehab it. That worked out quite well for me. But I do think that period, it took me, to be honest, it took me a couple of years to really find my love for it again. But I think having that break made me a better athlete after, just because I was so appreciative that I could even do it again, that then obviously every bit of progress you just appreciate that much more. Would you say that's kind of how you found it as well, with taking that step back?
Yeah, for sure. Like literally couldn't load 70 kilos on my back without like a pretty darn bad pain. And if I can squat 120 kilos to depth, that's like a huge W. And like, you can't compare every session to literally your best strength ever, because that's just like mental like failure every single session if you're trying to do that. So I think just small baby steps and wins were just kind of the way to go. And then it makes you appreciative of the sport. I think it just makes you appreciate like being healthy again in a whole new like view as well.
Yeah. So as we're filming this, you are about 2 weeks out of Powerlifting American Nationals. I actually haven't looked at the roster. Is there much competition for you in the 57s, or is it going to, like, are you healthy enough to push at that comp, or do you think it's just going to be go do what you need to secure your world spot and then kind of worry about building into worlds and taking it more slowly like that?
I think it's just going to be kind of the latter, where I need to go in and do what I can do, and just go from there. Like, there's no reason for me to try to ball out at this meet. Like, the purpose is to secure a world spot and to do that in like a super healthy way. So like my coach, Steve Denobi, has like already set expectations for this competition to where we're going in to hit what we want to hit. Just set ourselves up to be obviously kind of into like the primetime session for Worlds, and that should be kind of the overall focus. So we don't do something where I further injure myself, or heaven forbid something else happens. Yeah,
I think obviously that is the sensible choice, especially because Worlds is only 10 weeks after.
I think, I want to say 10, something like that. Yeah,
it's a very short turnaround. So I guess for you, that then gives you the chance to almost secure the thing in the mind of, I'm healthy enough to compete, and then you can build into Worlds and do what you need to do. And I believe at Worlds this year, you're going to have, is it Sarah Naldi that moved down a weight class?
Yes.
Someone moved down. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's her.
How are you feeling about coming back in probably an even more competitive weight class?
Honestly, I'm excited for it, because like, I think one, competition pushes the world record even more, and that's kind of like the new shift in mindset, I think, with Sheffield as well. And two, it makes more people watch the class. So I want, as many eyes on women's powerlifting and 57 powerlifting as possible. So I think it's gonna be super fun. It makes me excited to compete as well too. Like, obviously on meet day, I'm not the most like talkative person. I just kind of sit there, but I am excited to compete and have a competitive weight class to where, it's going to be down to the last deadlift type thing.
I've heard you speak about how you are on meet day before, and I think I've heard you say that you're quite reserved, you're just in your own little bubble. Do you pay any attention to what's going on at all, or are you just very much in my own world, handle load the bar for me, I'll just go out and do it?
Yeah, I literally have no idea what's happening, and like, that's fine. Like, I'll see, the attempt selection, and my coach will kind of run through it briefly, but he doesn't tell me any of the game day strategy. And so when deadlifts come around, like, I have no idea kind of like where I'm at. And that's okay, because I just need to focus on myself. I don't need to know what anyone else is doing. So like, that's why I feel like if you ever watch like the videos of me like deadlifting, I look insane, because I don't know whether I am in like 10th place or like 2nd place, or I'm pulling the first. I have no idea. So I just go all out regardless. Yeah.
I like that. I guess it like it kind of takes the pressure off because no matter what, you're going to just do what you can, right? So in training then, obviously not taking into account the fact that you've been rehabbing, this probably isn't the best timing to ask this question, but are you driven by what your competitors do? Like if you see someone like Jade pulling like really high reps on deadlift, like she reps like 240 on deadlift or something, I don't know. Like, do you see that and it motivates you, or are you quite detached from what other competitors in your weight class are doing?
I try to stay like relatively out of it. Like, to be honest, I usually mute everyone like a couple of months in advance, just so I don't happen to see it. Like maybe I'll see it on King of the Lifts, like reposts, but I really don't pay attention to that because like no matter what, at the end of the day, whether someone is pulling 240 and I'm pulling only 220, like it doesn't matter. Whoever has the best attempt selection and the strongest on the day is going to win. So I try not to let that affect me mentally, when I'm just in the gym training or like on the platform as well.
Yeah, I think that's one thing with this sport. Like you can only lift what you can lift at the end of the day, right? And as long as you're ticking every box that you can, you're going to just wherever you place in the day is down to that. Like you can't control what other people lift. With this as well, so I wanted to ask you because I've watched quite a lot of your YouTube and stuff in the past, and I know you're someone that is quite like you speak quite a lot about the fact that in your off-season periods you do generally sit a bit over your weight class, and then you just diet down a little bit before and then do a cute cut into comp. Now with your injury, did I hear on your recent YouTube video you've got up to 65 kilos?
Yeah, I was living life to the fullest. Let me tell you, when I withdrew from Worlds, I was like, you know what, this is gonna be a full break. So I went all out. I gained weight pretty darn quick, not in a healthy way, didn't care, just ate whatever, and then slowly started coming back down and just did a bunch of small diet phases and really locked in kind of these last like couple months. Yeah, I usually sit like 60 kilos max, and I was up to like 65.
See, I was going to ask you about this because I mean, often when people are injured and things, like letting yourself obviously eat in a bit more of a surplus is one thing that will help you with your recovery. And I have a few questions around this. So firstly, do you think you would move up to 63 at any point, or is it actually quite easy for you to make 57? It was literally just a case of, like you say, just relax completely around your food.
Yeah, I think now like I'm pretty much chilling at 57. Like I'm currently 2 weeks out. I am in a really good spot to make weight easily. So I don't know. The world is open. I think depending on how this year's Worlds go and then Sheffield next year goes, will determine whether I want to stay at 57. But I think in the future, there'll be some sort of weight class change. I won't say like which direction, but I think there's definitely like options either way.
That was a nice little hint there.
Yeah.
And then with that as well, I wanted to ask you about your bench press. So just from seeing your Instagram, it looks like during this time your bench press you already had a big bench, but it looks like it's gone very, very well in training. Do you think part of that is the weight gain, and have you maintained that as you've cut back down, do you think?
Yeah, so bench obviously is like the most affected by any sort of body weight manipulation. So when I was bulking, I definitely felt strong on bench. Like I think I hit 120 either like once or twice, and that's 10 kilos over my best comp PR at 57. And then I've been consistently able to hang out and hit 115 right now in training. So I'm down 7 kilos. And I've been able to hit, around where I was previously. So I think I've been able to hold on to strength well. I don't think I feel like as juiced up, obviously, as I did when I was at 120, for lack of a better words. But I don't feel weak on bench, and I'm able to kind of just maintain, I think, to comp standard a bit better now as well, too. Whereas maybe back then I was a little bit quick on the pauses. So as a whole, I'm really happy with my bench press strength. It's definitely, I just have to be more intentional, I think, with my positioning, because you do lose a little bit. I think when you lose that like weight, you have to be very intentional with it.
Yeah, I mean, still holding on to 5 kilos extra onto your bench is obviously great progress anyway. So no, it sounds like you've obviously held on to it, and it's a better standard of lift as well. So that's all very positive. Another question I had around the weight cut.
I know there's gonna be so many weight cut questions because it was egregious.
I'm in the 84s, okay, for a bit of context, and after every meet, I have this awful habit of just rebounding, and gradually over the time, my weight is just creeping up and up. And I think after my last meet, I ended up getting up to I'm not going to say 90 because I got up to 89.9. So it wasn't quite 90. But I'm currently in the process of cutting down. And the thing which I don't usually struggle with, because usually I coach myself with nutrition, is accountability. Like normally I'm absolutely fine because I know I've got a set date. I have to be at this weight by, I'll get it done. but this time through, I've just got no accountability. So I'm actually now working with someone for this. And I want to ask you, because I think you're self-coached for your nutrition, am I right?
Mm.
How do you find the accountability side, especially when this time around, obviously you had more to lose than you normally would?
Yeah. So I will say, as far as accountability goes, like I started like my cut, and then like my coach is like, hey, how's it going? Like, where are you at? So he put in like a little bit of accountability for me as well too, where I just like log like the calories that I ate and my body weight. Like beforehand, I was just doing it in like my Fitness Pal, but know that he has a set of eyes on it too, definitely like is it like a check and one that I needed. But as far as like the rest of things go, I just try to find a good balance of what works. So like everyone's different. Some people find that they can lock in 7 days a week and just eat the same thing every day, and that's perfectly fine. But I have to have a balance where I lock in maybe 4 days a week and then I have 3 days of flexibility or something like that. So I think as far as the accountability aspect, I set like mini goals for myself. So I'd be at, 62 kilos by October and then 60 kilos by December. So that way I'm not at 63 kilos in December thinking, oh man, I have 6 more to go. Like that's not a great spot. So finding like small milestones helped me, I think, the most, and just being like, hey, you don't do everything today. Like you're fine, relax, but just slowly have this kind of downtick over the next couple months.
Yeah, I think that's a really positive way to look at doing it as well. And like, I think I like what you said there as well about if you're not someone that can lock in 7 days a week, which I'm definitely not.
Yeah, same.
then, yeah, having that flexibility on a few more of the days and stuff as well is a good idea. A question that I don't know if you listened to my episode with Marcellus. I asked him, and I also asked Jane Jones and I had her on because they're both nutrition coaches. At what point would you advise someone to look at maybe moving up a weight class? I don't know if you heard this, but I thought I'd get your take on it as well. I'm sure you're all going to give similar answers because so far we both have. But if a lifter came to you and they were like, I don't know, I think I want to stay, let's say 63, but they actually, they sit about 65 and they're just unsure what to do. What advice would you give to someone that isn't sure whether it's time to move up?
Yeah, that's like a really great question. I think it depends on like a couple different factors too. So like one, I would say like length / longevity in the sport. Like how long have they actually been competing? How long has it been at 63? And then look at their progress. So have they been able to add any kilos to their total? How hard has the weight cuts been in the past? Are they like barely scraping by with a max effort gut and water cut? And then lastly, how competitive are they in the class? And is that like a goal of theirs? So if they're, let's say, a super competitive lifter, they're going to crank out this hard cut. It's worth it to them if they can add a kilo literally a year. If they are a, let's say, more of a, let's say, national or state level lifter, and they haven't added any kilos, or it's very, very small progress and they hate doing the cut, then I'd say, probably move up. So I think looking at those factors would kind of determine whether a lifter should or shouldn't. And it's probably going to come down to the goals, competitiveness as well too. Like someone like Meg Scanlon, probably going to stay 63, whether she's sitting at 65 or 66, but someone who might be more kind of like less competitive or not have that as competitive goal would have the better opportunity and enjoyment of like moving up. Yeah.
No, I think that's a really nice answer. I'm jumping around all over the place with these questions.
You're good.
That's fine. There is no structure.
I love
it. So let's go back to you as an athlete. Firstly, I wanted to ask you about how you found Sheffield. So you didn't go this year, I don't think, did you? I know you obviously didn't compete, but you didn't go.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming you've watched it. How did you find competing at Sheffield, firstly? Like, what was that experience like?
Sheffield was crazy. I think that was like literally everything you want out of powerlifting. If you're a competitive athlete, like that is what you want is Sheffield. Like nerves, insane. Like I'm always like a nervous person, but like I literally have not felt as shaky as I ever have. I think I've mentioned this before, like the first squat, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to pass out. Like I don't know where I'm looking, like what's happening right now. It's a crazy experience because there's nothing that can prepare you to walk out on stage with like 1,000 people like screaming at you like that. So it was just overall an incredibly positive experience. Like I think SBD is just top tier with not only like preparing athletes, providing this incredible platform for them to compete on, all the stuff behind the scenes with media, like promoting athletes, the food they provide, like everything is just down to a T of like what you want as a competitive person and experience. So like Sheffield, no matter what the outcome would be there. It was just, I would not hesitate to do it again. It was insane.
And it wasn't long after Sheffield, obviously, that you made the decision to withdraw from Worlds. So were you fully healthy for that Sheffield, or were you kind of pushing through some niggles at that time?
No, Sheffield, I was 100% healthy, like felt great. And it really was just training. Honestly, it was also going super well, minus maybe deadlifts into Worlds prep. Deadlifts felt a little bit kind of after Sheffield, just technique wise, but I felt great until I ended up tweaking my back. The squat and bench were totally fine into Worlds prep.
Yeah, I was like, you still PB'd your total at Sheffield, didn't you? You hit what, 4 kilo total PB? Like, it's still good improvement.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that final deadlift, it's a long time ago now, but I'm right in thinking it was grip as well. Like,
it just slipped, which is so dumb. It's not even cool. Like, it was flying up and just slipped, which happens. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. And then this is so not in time order, so sorry to everyone listening. Your meet before that was your first ever World Championships.
Yes.
And I wanted to ask, so you were in USAPL before that, but how did you find your first ever World Championships? Like, was it what you expected it to be? I feel like that year was when, like, a lot of people had moved over, wasn't it, if I'm remembering rightly? Like, it was getting a lot busier. How did you find the World Championships? Like, was it everything you thought it was going to be? World
Championships, yeah, I would say in the end, yes, it was all that I wanted to be, because like I'm just excited to be there. Like, to be honest, like I just wanted to meet everyone and like be on the highest level possible, and that literally is it. So having like watched it for so many years beforehand, getting to be there was just a super incredible experience. Just because I know it's the highest standard possible, and then obviously Sheffield's a little bit different because it's like loud, it's hype, it is a total different vibe. Worlds is kind of like a professional meet, if that makes sense. Like, it is a bit more quiet, and if you want hype, you have to bring it. Like, there's not, I don't know, a crazy amount of music going on behind you, so if you want noise in the room, you have to bring the energy into it.
Yeah, no, of course. So are you much of a hype lifter, or are you quite calm as you approach the bar? Like, what are you, I'm trying to think back to watching you compete, but are you like internally hyped, or?
Yeah, like I definitely do a lot of like positive self-talk as I like walk up into the bar, and like I'll do like a little bit of like maybe like a yell of some sort, and it's honestly just for me to get out of my head, so I'm literally not thinking about anything. So if I'm just like quiet and walk up to the barbell, that means there's more time for me to overthink things. So if I'm just yelling, I physically cannot do that. So that's my thought process there.
I like that strategy. I guess it's possibly similar to when Bobby Butters talks about her screaming, because she says it like releases that anxiety, and I guess you do get out of your head, right? You're not thinking about anything as you're screaming.
No, you're just yelling. Yeah, that's why I love watching Bobby. Not to like sidetrack here, but Bobby's probably one of my favorite lifters. Yeah, Bobby is awesome. I love watching her lift. I love watching her like get hype. Like, there's no other lifter that really does that, especially on the women's side. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I was there in person for Sheffield, purely just to watch her come out and screaming at the bar in front of that crowd. It would have been so good. So gonna go into your coaching a little bit. Am I right in thinking, this shows that I've definitely watched on YouTube, because I think you spoke about it on there, it was after that Worlds that you went into full-time coaching? Is that right?
Yep. So after Worlds, like I had been coaching, I had a regular day job, and then I went full-time coaching in 2023. So it's been, it's been like 2 years. Yeah, that's crazy.
How did you find transitioning from balancing obviously full-time work and coaching to taking that leap into full-time coaching?
It was definitely exciting. I was a little nervous at first, because you're going all in on your business, and the only person holding yourself up is you. So it's exciting. I do like the challenge of it, and I like being like my quote unquote like own boss, where you can create your schedule, create your boundaries, figure out how you want to structure your day and things like that. So it definitely made like the day-to-day, I enjoy it. I love what I do. So structuring that is like super, super nice, and being able to focus full-time on athletes and not having to balance a day job makes it a lot easier as well too, where I feel like my quality of coaching has increased, because I just strictly have the time for it. Like, working a 9 to 5 is challenging, training after that, and then going home and programming is a really long day. So now I have more time to sit, and I feel like pay attention to have like more detailed and conversations with my athletes, which is awesome.
Yeah, definitely. What point in your lifting career did you start coaching?
Pretty early on as well. Oh, let me try to remember. Because I started out, like, I just wanted to learn, like, the basics when I was lifting. So I ended up working, like, literally, I think my first, like, quote unquote coaching job, I worked at, like, Gold's Gym. I did personal training, and I did some sort of, like, specialized, like, in-home training as well. So I did, like, a lot of, like, in-person training when I first started, so I could train, like, Gen Pop. And then I worked as a independent contractor for another coaching service for a couple years. And then from there, I went independent. And then from there, I went full time. So it was like kind of order of operations. So I don't remember when I exactly started coaching. I know it was around COVID time. So at least by 2019, 2020, I was like kind of getting into it and all that good stuff.
I always find it interesting when people that coach started off in person as well. Do you think that's had a good carryover in, I mean, your ability to obviously work with, I'm guessing you work with a variety of people when you're doing more in person, like commercial training. Do you think that's impacted your skill set as a online coach as well?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think just like working with like Gen Pop people, like you can teach, someone to literally squat for the first time ever. And that's a cue or a way to phrase cues, a way to learn how to explain things that you can carry over to powerlifting too. Because you can't, this is just a general example, but if you can't get someone to squat to depth who's never squatted before, taking an elite level lifter who is having like hip impingement or some sort of pain, how do you fix them if you can't fix like, step one? So I think that one, just communicating with people and understanding like how people accept kind of critiques, cues, processes, how seeing like different people's minds works has helped me in now cueing powerlifters in a different way or programming or talking to people. Like I think it's just the best foundation possible is talking to as many people from different backgrounds, and that just translates to better like overall understanding of one, how the body works, especially if you don't come from like a I don't know, science-based background where you went to school for it, and then two, just being able to understand how to like better have communication skills.
Yeah, no, I really, really like that answer. And with that as well, as a coach, I'd like to ask you what I've been asking so many people recently. Okay. What are your thoughts on Agatha? I mean, there are a lot of things we can discuss with Agatha and what she's doing lately.
Yeah.
First question is with the 7 times a week SBD. What are your thoughts on this?
That's hilarious you say that, because I literally sent her, like, I can't remember what reel it was, one of her posts. I sent it to my coach Steve, and I was like, dude, when are we dropping the 7 times a week SBD, man? But like, it's insane. I love it. Like, she's a full-time athlete, and obviously what's working is working. When people hear 7 times SBD, they're probably thinking like RP7s or like, pretty intensive training every day, when in reality, she's probably doing like 3 or 4 of those sessions very sub-max. So like, if it's working for her, then keep doing it. I think it's fun. I think it'll open up a whole new kind of like approach to programming. Maybe, I don't know. It was working for her. It's cool.
I actually did. Her coach did a seminar recently, and I joined it, and it was just so interesting. Firstly, he is so clever. Like the amount of detail and like all the data he collects is just so in depth, and I really liked it. Like, I'm definitely not going to explain it in tons of detail right now, but the way I kind of explained it to my friends that were asking about it was, it's almost like when you get to the point where you need to add a bit of extra volume, rather than just adding it onto your already probably quite long, high intensity sessions, just add an extra day of shorter volume, low intensity. And it's the same as like 6-day-a-week benches, right? Yep. You're not going heavy 6 days a week. You're probably going to have 2-3 days that are really sub-max, just like technical work and variations. And it's basically applying those principles to squats and deadlift. And it was just so interesting hearing him talk about it. And it makes me want to do 6 days a week SBD, but I know I shouldn't.
I know. It's like a fun, like kind of concept too. But I don't know. You have to sacrifice some like bicep curl time if you're going to be doing SBD 6 times a week. So it's like, can you sacrifice that?
Agatha. It's working for Agatha.
That's fair. That's fair.
Another thing as well, I was going to talk to you about as a nutrition coach as well. Obviously, the jumping of weight classes and the news that she might potentially be trying to go to 63 as well.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on, well, firstly, I mean, there's obviously Evie did it first. Shell's done it now. Like, it's obviously working for them. Like, what are your thoughts on people cutting down weight classes to then kind of move back up, and just with her obviously just going from one to the other, just all the time?
I think it's a super fun strategy for right now. And right now, I mean, like, from 2022 to maybe like the next couple years, because like to a point, like I don't think it's going to be where you can drop down a weight class so easily and break it, because obviously these lifters have been doing it. So now the record, like Agatha is setting these world records like crazy. I don't think many people are going to be able to continue cutting down, just like raising the standard from like 47s up or, 59s up as much. So like right now, I think it's a super interesting strategy. And if it's, like again, if you have a planned cut and a process of what you're going to do, I think it's possible. But if you're someone who's already so lean, like Panna, that's, think about someone who like that trying to cut down a weight class would be impossible. And the strength loss would be huge. So like, I think it just depends on one, the lifter, and then two, how manageable the athlete and the coach thinks the actual total is, if it's like reasonable to be able to like hit that, whatever total may be.
Yeah, I like that you pointed out, obviously, that it's only going to be kind of doable for a set amount of time, for maybe not for Agatha, because she seems to just progress no matter what she weighs.
Excluding, her.
Elle, Evie, like these weight classes, the totals are getting higher and higher. Like Shell will probably, if he stays 66 for another year, potentially be able to boost that 66 record closer to the 800 mark, but he's not going to be able to then cut to 59s, right? Like, there's only a limit to how much you can do. And then obviously as time goes on, all of those weight classes, that record is going to be more and more unreachable for most of them. And then it's going to just be who can obviously chip it by a certain amount. Another discussion I've heard a lot of people having lately that I'd love your opinion on is with Sheffield's scoring system. Some people are saying that it's just going to kind of fizzle out as people are basically unable to break world records. I have my thoughts on it, but I just wonder what your thoughts were.
I don't think that they're going to fizzle out. I think they're going to get incredibly harder. I think the first year, obviously, like I have to look at the statistics, but I know that more people were over like the 100% mark. And this year it was less, and probably next year it might be as well. But as a whole, I don't think it's going to fizzle by any means, because we have so many young junior lifters coming up. Like last 2 years ago, it was like pretty much like me and Jade at Worlds going head to head. There's going to be like 4 people in 57s that are going to be like head to head this year. So like there's more people coming up into the sport, and it's growing. It's not just the top 3 lifters in 2025. Like people say this all the time, it's harder to stay at the top than get to the top. And that's going to be the same trend here. I think we're going to have so many new lifters coming up. It's just going to keep bumping up the weight classes regardless for the totals. So I don't think it's going to fizzle, but it's going to be different than it was like the first like 2 or 3 years for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think I like that you mentioned the juniors, because there are so many juniors just coming up out of
there's
nowhere.
So many. Everyone stop, chill. I'm old. Relax.
What happened to these junior lifters going out drinking all the time and just training for fun? Like, go back to those days. Take it seriously when you're older.
Yeah. Literally. Just take a break. It's fine.
Yeah, just take a break until you're like 25. That's fine. See, my thoughts on it as well, like even if the records do get pushed so far that it is next to impossible to break them, right? And they stand for a good few years at a time. It's still going to surely be exciting seeing people try, right? Yeah. And just push and push. And then when a record does get broken, it's going to be an even crazier achievement, because it's almost like we're becoming numb to records being broken.
Right. There's just a flurry of weight class drops, people breaking records, people coming up out of nowhere, like is all flurry. I think it could still be 1 or 2 like breakouts, but I think it'll slow down a little bit and just be a little bit more different.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. While we're obviously talking about the weight class changes and things, I wanted to ask you, going back to your cut and as a nutrition coach, what advice do you have for people trying to maintain their strength while they cut?
Yeah. So pacing and then macro tracking for sure are the 2 biggest things. And like I mentioned this in like a recent YouTube video, when I talked about cutting down a weight class or cutting down a significant amount of body weight, is like if you lose, let's say 5 kilos in a month, you're going to feel like crap and you're going to lose strength. If you lose 5 kilos over 3 months, you're going to feel a lot better and probably hold on to strength. So like pacing out your cut to be a little bit longer, or looking at your time frame you have available. And then number 2, just go ahead and grab what food you're eating. Like the more factors you can kind of dial in and control, and the more data points, the easier it's going to be too. If you have no idea what you're eating and just start cutting out random food groups, you're going to feel like shit and you're not going to do a good job. But if you can somehow, kind of track your macros, learn a little bit about protein intake and prioritize that, then you're probably going to be a lot more successful.
Yeah, I also like that you briefly mentioned your YouTube there, because I actually watched your cutting video the other day just after you put it out. And it's just like, this might sound bad, but it's not meant to. It's like, it's simple, but people don't think of it like that. And that's one thing I really like about your YouTube, because you put out a lot of informative content, but you break it down in a way that's just easy to digest, which I think a lot of people don't necessarily do. And I actually want to ask you about your YouTube channel, because yours is more around like informative content. And I just want to ask you, how you find making YouTube videos basically, and how you find that process.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I really enjoy like the content that I'm putting out now. Not to say that I didn't, but like I originally started like YouTube as like a goof. Like it was like a joke. Like no one looked back on these old videos, but it was like, oh my God, no, I deleted so many. They were so bad. I would make like skits and stuff. It was so cringe. But like I made it as like a creative outlet because I wanted to have fun. So like now I kind of look at, instead of necessarily like what I think is the most fun thing to do, I think, okay, what is like the most kind of like topic right now to talk about, or something on my mind? And then I kind of go from there, write out the script and the highlights I want to make it. And like having that kind of script makes it, one, easier for me to kind of explain just in a way that I think is a storytelling way, which is something I usually struggle with, is like, how can I tell this as a story versus jumping up around and about? Because I'm not always the best at that, is making a clear list. So I have to write a script out. And then that just kind of helps me like hit the points that I want to hit. And then I take the feedback that I get from there, whatever else to make as well too. But I don't know, making YouTube videos is fun. And like, I want to make them every week, but it's just hard to create the time for it, or else they'll look like dog shit. I don't want everyone to see me like having, bad video content out there, but I really enjoy it. And if I have more time this year, that's definitely one of my goals, is to do more content.
No, I really like, we'll talk about your old content in a second.
Oh God, yeah.
Down, and I remember that's how I first discovered you as a lifter, I think, was through your YouTube. But one thing like Gavin and I spoke about when I had Gavin on the podcast was basically, I don't know if it was on the podcast or after, but it was around females in the powerlifting space creating content. I have a YouTube channel. I have a question
for you. Can I ask you real quick? Not to deter. What is, if you know off the top of your head, what is your breakdown on your YouTube channel of like gender or age groups? Like, the stats on it?
I'm sure I can quickly find them.
Let's have a look. It's crazy. I have deep dived into that recently with me and looking at my other friends' YouTube statistics.
Oh, so age demographic is all 25 to 34-year-olds apparently.
Okay.
Oh, nice. And 56% male, 43% female.
That's so good. Okay.
I'm okay with that. I'm impressed that it's more men than women, because it's literally just, I'd say, training vlogs loosely. It's me yapping at the camera.
Love that.
About really boring topics and showing my training.
Go for it.
But yeah, no, and then mostly, well, actually, no, the geography side of it is everywhere, but mostly UK and US.
Fair enough, yeah.
What was yours?
Prior to my cut video that I literally just released, I was at, if you had to guess, what do you think the breakdown of men to women were, statistics-wise?
I would like to say it was mostly women.
It was
not going to say that.
It was 97% men watch my channel, 3% women. After releasing the video, I'm now at 86% men and 14% women. So we're starting to grow. But that's like crazy. It was a insane split. I think age demographics wise, very similar to yours. It's like 20 to 40 for the most part. And I think US and a little bit of the UK as well too. But it was just like a crazy split. So like one of my goals as well too is to maybe like cater a bit more and just get more women as well watching, powerlifting content. But I just thought it was interesting that your split was kind of more 50-50.
I was surprised that mine was 50-50, to be fair. But I guess with yours, it is more informative content, but I am surprised that it's not more females watching it. But then I do think there is a lack of female content creators in the powerlifting space. So I think, especially on YouTube, I think a lot of female lifters probably don't even think to find them. Like, I don't have a big following on YouTube, but I regularly get messages from girls in the UK that powerlift that like, oh my God, like I'm glad to have found a female creating that content. Because a lot of guys, especially I think in the US now, a lot of the guys are like vlogging a lot more and showing their training and stuff.
Delaney,
I think
all those guys
as well. Yeah.
Oh yeah, all those guys. Yeah, which is like, it's more competitive for them. So like, if women want to break out in the space, now's the time. Make more content.
Literally, that's why I started my YouTube, but it hasn't blown up. What's going on?
Come on, we'll get together. We'll collab.
But let's talk about your old videos, because I think this is how I found you. So you were in USAPL at the time, and I used to watch some USAPL meets, but not loads. But I remember finding you. You might have been on King of the Lift and briefly mentioned this. I can't remember, but you used to go on TikTok and like rate TikToks. My God. And I swear I remember hearing you say that you didn't even have TikTok. You would just download it for the sake of rating stuff on YouTube.
Yeah. I literally didn't even have an account. Like, when you just Google like TikTok videos and they just pop up, I literally do that sometimes. And I would make an account and then I could watch the cringe. Oh, it's so bad. But like, I think that was like my first YouTube video that got like any traction. I titled it something like, please no one look this up. It's something like TikToks that make me cringe. And it got like 10K views in like a week. And then like the rest of my content, you know, was like pretty whatever, like not that hype. But it was just like shit that made me laugh. And like back in the day, I like reviewed, I don't know if you're familiar, but with like the Marvel show, like the She-Hulk.
Yeah.
When that came out, I was like, this is crazy. I'm gonna make content on this. And it was just me reviewing like those episodes from like a female lens, and it was just super random, and it just made me laugh, so I did it anyways. But yeah, now I try to be a bit more professional with it.
I do think it's good to have that balance. So like your more recent content is definitely more of the professional side, but
yeah,
it's nice getting to see people's personalities through the other stuff as well. Especially, I think, as a coach, like I think there's a line, because I don't like Instagram, for example. I don't have a coaching Instagram. I just use my personal one.
Okay,
but one
nice.
thing I do on my personal one is I make sure to show my personality as much as possible, because then when I have like a consultation call with someone, they know what I'm like from the get-go, and they know me a bit more. And I think the same thing with YouTube, like with your content on YouTube, like they'll know that you're easy enough to get on with, like they'll know what your personality is like, and they'll probably be able to tell from those videos if you're someone that they would probably get on with to then inquire with, if that makes sense. So I think even from a business perspective, it's just not why I do it, probably not why you do it. Yeah. Having those videos actually really helps, because people can get to know you before actually inquiring.
Yeah, and I like appreciate that as well too. I would say like most recently I have gotten a couple inquiries that have come from YouTube, which is like, you know, it makes sense with more content focused stuff that you're going to get those inquiries, which is like super exciting as well too, which tells me hopefully I'm making good content, that I should keep doing it.
Yeah, no, you definitely are. I enjoy your content, if that means anything.
Thank you. Yeah.
I enjoy it.
Thank you.
To be fair, I've kept you for quite a while. I've had a list of questions in my head. As you can tell, I'm a bit chaotic today. I'm a bit all over the place. So we've kind of spoken about what's next for you, obviously, but in terms of the rest of this year, and then obviously next year as well, like you mentioned Sheffield. So is it next year? There's 2 Sheffields, isn't there?
Yes, I needed, hopefully I'm saying this correctly. If I'm not, someone can correct me in the comments, but I'm pretty sure it is the last Sheffield that's going to be in like the massive building in the downtown area. And then they're moving to a different venue in the winter time of 2026. So there'll be 2 Sheffields in 2026, if I have that correctly.
Yeah, so I think the one in January time is the arena from before, or like the City Hall from before, which I think is like 2,000-3,000 capacity. And then they're moving to an arena which I believe has up to like 13K seats, but they're going to section it off to what they need. I'm very excited to see how quickly they can fill that. Yeah. Sheffield tickets obviously sold out ridiculously fast this year. Granted, I'm sure they held some back for nearer the time once things have been announced, which I think they did last year as well. But that is crazy. 24 hours, I think it was, and it was sold out.
Yeah, and they literally started selling them like the day after Sheffield as well too. Like no one knows the roster, no one knows who's going to be there in 2026. People don't care; they just want to watch powerlifting, which is awesome.
Yeah, I think it's really exciting, and I'm really excited to see how quickly they can obviously fill the bigger venue. I think people are probably going to be surprised at how quickly they fill it. Basically, just want your thoughts on potentially doing 2 Sheffields next year. What your plans are going forwards. Obviously, you mentioned potentially changing weight classes down the line. Who knows which direction? Do you think, obviously you don't have to say, do you think that's something you would wait and save for a Sheffield to change for the first time? Or do you think you would kind of do it before Worlds at Nationals kind of time?
As of right now, if I were to like change weight classes, I think it would have to be for Sheffield, barring I didn't think that I could be competitive in the weight class at Worlds or something, or it would be too hard to, go either direction. So like, there's a purpose, I think, when people are making these weight cuts for Sheffield, and it's kind of the one surprise factor of it all. Everyone's having fun seeing what they can break and if they're going up or down. And then 2, timing too, because like if you're doing Worlds, maybe you want to do another meet. I know that, what is it coming up? That's also in 2026 or 2025. I can't remember. World Games. If you're doing that as well. I was like, what year are we in? 2025, I think.
That's a good one to forget.
Yeah. So if you're doing like all these meets, let's say you're doing a hard cut like Agatha did, you probably can't be that same weight for a whole year. That's pretty unsustainable. So like in my mind, I had the same thought process. If I were to do any sort of weight cut, ideally it would just be for a specific need, for a specific purpose as well. For a total, I think it could be competitive in, and that also depends on the lifters going into that Sheffield too. What's going to be stacked or not stacked.
Yeah, I guess like next year for you potentially, like if you, let's say you get in Sheffield in January, Sheffield November time, and then also Worlds in the middle, like that's quite a lot of comps, because you're someone that typically does a couple of comps a year. Am I right in thinking that?
Yeah, I really don't like to compete that often. Like 2 times a year is like my sweet spot.
Do you think part of that is to give yourself that time to obviously sit a little bit heavier and just kind of go into an off season and do more other areas of training?
Yeah, I think like I not only get like a big like physical benefit of it, of just like letting my body rest, and I feel like that's why prior to this year I'd been so healthy. But like that lets me rest and lets me build my total, and then mentally I get really fatigued from competing. Like I put a lot of pressure on myself anyways. So like if I did more than 2 comps a year, I think it'd be too much to where I'd be like stressed all the time.
Yeah, no, of course. So obviously at the moment you have the benefit that you are kind of on your own in your own league with American nationals. Like you kind of, your Sheffield total qualifies you for Worlds, and obviously if they keep the qualification system the same, hopefully that then continues, and it means you don't have to do that extra meet in the middle. But I guess if 57 comes up, which I mean I'm not following too closely, there may be some on the way.
Yeah,
there probably are.
probably
pesky juniors. But I guess at the moment you have the benefit that you can take American nationals off and just focus on Worlds, because I guess really January to June is quite a good turnaround time. June to November isn't terrible either, like if they're your 2 meets for the year. But then, I mean, you probably don't know this, I don't think this is probably worth asking, but I don't know if maybe so I know British powerlifting have done this recently, where they've kind of changed the qualifying procedure, so you have to do nationals even if you're on the Sheffield roster. And I wonder if Sheffield being November means that Powerlifting America might bring in a similar system, because technically you've got time between the two to prep.
That's true. I don't know. I know that like the first year, Powerlifting America is quite new. There's like not a whole lot of people just competing in general. So there's a lot of pressure for people who were considering the timeline of Sheffield World Nationals. And now there are people who had to do back-to-back meets and fight for their spot in the world team and fight for their spot from Worlds on the Sheffield. So I think it's getting more competitive to the point where people probably will have to do nationals, especially on the men's side. Women, there's already a lot more women on this roster as well too, which is awesome. So like, we'll see how things go. I don't know if they'll mandate anything as far as schedule wise goes. People might be upset about that, but I think regardless, more people will probably have to kind of go and do nationals regardless of, Sheffield and things like that. Yeah.
So I have a question for you. I'm just loading up the roster. Am I right in thinking you do follow powerlifting quite closely? Like in terms of other weight classes within America? So I just wanted to ask you for some predictions. This is going to come out literally like the week before Powerlifting American Nationals, right? So
you need to open up the roster. You're gonna fact check me. I'm gonna have no idea what I'm talking about.
I'm not gonna fact check you at all. I was gonna list some names off. So I was gonna ask you, because I think on the women's side, at least from the women that I follow, like, and I've had a few of them on the podcast already, the 69s is going to be a bloodbath on the women's side. So we've got Gabby Martinez with a 553 total, Celine Crum 550. I believe she's just moved up as well, hasn't she?
Yes, yeah.
And then Jackie with a 547.5 total. So those three, it's going to be very close. It was a great battle last year. And I wondered if you've got any predictions for me. I'm putting you on the spot here. I did not prep you for this.
No, you're so good. I'm super excited. Honestly, this is probably going to be one of the most exciting classes to watch as well, too. And it goes like pretty deep. Like there's a long roster of the 69s, which is awesome. So I haven't been watching too much training videos, but based on the totals and kind of, I think the lifter I follow most closely is probably Jackie, because I also saw her compete. I saw her and Celine compete in person last year, but I think Jackie has just a lot more kind of room in the tank. So she's like, 5 kilos, a little bit under kind of Gabby's best and 2 under Celine. So I think I have Jackie taking it maybe this year, and then Celine and Gabby to fight for second place is my predictions. No one yell at me, but I think based on training momentum, that's where I kind of see the roster going.
I've noticed as well, at least from what I've seen, it looks like they're hiding their top end as well. I actually don't know if I follow Celine, which is really random because she's a name that I've always known of. But I know Gabby and Jackie don't seem to be showing what's actually on the bar a lot of the time for their top sets.
No, Gabby always hides it. Yeah, I have no idea what she's doing. I'm sure she's doing well, but I have no idea what she's lifting.
I'm very excited to see that battle. I'm just scrolling through. I think in the 76s, it looks like Crannon's quite comfortable ahead. And I just feel like it's exciting just to see her obviously coming on the scene. Like she's been around a couple of years now, but obviously she's progressing really well. 84s we've got. I've kind of skipped a lot of weight classes and I feel quite bad. I'm just scrolling as we're chatting. I think, to be honest, on the next side I want to ask you about was the men's side, like the 83, 93. Although, looks like in the 84 plus, because Alexis Jones isn't doing it.
Yeah. So
that's
now we
interesting.
have
Bonica ranked at the
Bonica,
top.
Yeah, Bonica should. I mean, she's almost 100 kilos over the next. Yeah,
that's interesting. Didn't realize Waskar's doing it again in the 59s. His name is down.
Registered. I am assuming he's not. Yeah, he's not. I've watched his training videos. I think he's just doing worlds. Yeah, okay. I think he's just on the roster to be on the roster. So like, if anyone were to kind of rival him, he's on there.
Yeah, we've definitely got tight battles in a lot of these classes, but we're not doing a Powerlifting Mare preview show. I would have given you a heads up if that was the case.
And now transitioning.
It is. Well, it's nice to have someone on that also follows the powerlifting side as well, I think. I was going to ask you what you thought about the 83 battle. Who you thought would probably come out on top? I mean, my money's on Joe.
Yeah, I love Joe. Joe, I think, is pretty much secured. And I think he has so much more room to grow as well, too. Again, I watched him at the same comp last year that Celine and Jackie were at, too. And he, like, crushed it. So my money's on Joe. And then, I mean, I think Chris Perez / Delaney Wallace can kind of fight. And Sean Noriega now is over in the PA side, too. So it's going to be kind of a good battle. So, oh, man, they're so close, too. They're, like, the roster goes so deep. Everyone's from 830 up to 850. There's like a 4-way kind of like tie here. And there's Taylor Atwood, who I don't want to discredit as well. I feel like if I make predictions, people are going to yell at me. So I'm just going to say Joe Bornstein is going to get probably first easily, and then it'll be kind of the last pool on deadlifts to determine who's going to go or be second.
Do you follow the 93s very closely? We will get back to you in a second.
No, this is now we've turned this into a preview show. I follow like a couple lifters. Like I always watch Petrie's training blogs. He's just a fun lifter to watch, and like Damar as well. But obviously, like Gavin has like a little bit of a leg up there, but not by much. Because again, there's like 10 kilos that separates like the top like 3 or 4 guys here. So I think Keiko has been having a good training momentum as well. So I'm gonna probably put either him or Petrie / Gavin at the top.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to transition back to you, but I've kept you longer than I kind of intended to as well, so I apologize for that. I want to ask you more about your coaching. A question that I ask everyone when I remember. As you can tell, I'm really good at being organized. Have you ever, with your coaching, I think this could be me just being like feminist charm. I think especially as a female coach in this space, it can be hard. I just wondered if you've ever struggled with imposter syndrome, especially since transitioning to full-time coaching as well. If that's something you've kind of struggled with along that line?
For sure. I think that's like any coach in general, regardless of gender, and then especially in if you look at gender from a male-dominated like perspective or sport, for sure, where you feel like maybe a little bit inadequate and that you have to kind of be perfect when so many other coaches aren't. That's kind of like how I have felt coming up, where if I have any slip or mistake that I make, I take it to heart, or I used to take it a lot harder to heart than I kind of do now. I have a bit more objectivity and that mindset. But definitely some imposter syndrome. But I think the biggest thing that's helped me kind of overcome that is 1, building a community and networking with other coaches. And then 2, just more education, because if I feel grounded in my decisions, then whether the outcome is perfect or not perfect, I at least have a kind of like data-driven method to what I'm doing and can feel a bit more secure in my coaching services. So while, initially starting out, it's a bit kind of like jarring and a little bit of imposter syndrome-y. I think right now, having been in the sport a couple of years and just more and more practice, I feel a lot less of that and much more confident.
Yeah, no, I really like that answer. I think it's that thing where you just come to terms with the fact that even these people that you think seem like they know everything, they probably
No
don't.
one, yeah,
No one
no one
knows
knows
everything.
everything. If you
And
think
it's,
you know everything, you're screwed.
yeah, and it's being able to just know who to ask questions to, right? And if none of you know, then you'll figure it out together, right? And it's just admitting that you don't need to know everything. I think that's a really big lesson. I think it took me a while to learn that in my own coaching. Like, I think it took me a good couple of years to be like, people don't need me to know everything. They just need me to be willing to find it out.
That's such a great way to phrase it as well too, because like they say, for example, a lifter comes to you and they have like an injury and you just give them a blanket or some sort of band-aid versus diving deeper and asking the questions and figuring it out together. It's a lot better style of coaching versus like the quick fix band-aid trying to just do a general statement. I think like taking that time to just like do so much more education as a coach is just so worth it. Whether it's deep diving on stuff by yourself, making content for YouTube videos, even if you think you know the topic. I always research stuff before I make anything, even if it's like simple stuff. It just helps. So I think just having that kind of like education part of coaching is super, super beneficial.
No, I completely agree. With your coaching as well, so I'm assuming you've got lifters on both USAPL and Powerlifting America side?
Yeah, definitely starting to get more of a split now. When I was obviously like when the split initially happened, it was like 95% USAPL, 5% PA, and now it's kind of drifted the other direction.
Do you think a lot of lifters are moving over because that's where you are, or do you think it's just because is USAPL kind of shrinking over there? I don't really know.
I have a lot of thoughts on USAPL's actions.
You don't have to answer.
Yeah, I'm going to move away from that and say that I think more lifters are going towards the NAPF national side of things and wanting to do kind of just the world standard stuff, which is fun. And the different lifters have different priorities. Some love local meets and regionals. That's awesome. I want to support them in USAPL as like just being a coach. I obviously can't coach there or be there in person, but if they want to do that, that's awesome. Chase your goals. If you want to chase your goals to do World's Team or NAPFs or something in the IPF side, awesome. Chase your goals. Again, same thing. I'll support you there.
Yeah, no, and I think that's the best way to be. Like in the UK, we do have a few different federations, and I think British powerlifting is the one that people go to if they do have obviously the aspiration of competing internationally, even if it's Western Euros rather than rather than a higher level. And I guess NAPS is probably a similar level to that. I mean, like it's definitely getting more competitive as well. And yeah, it's what your aspirations are. Where I guess if you're someone that really enjoys more local meets and your area hosts more USAPL meets, then it makes sense probably to go that way, right?
Yeah.
With your move over then, did you obviously don't have to answer if you don't want to, but did you find there was much impact on your business when you decided to move over? Or, I mean, I'm assuming your athletes probably were really understanding, but did you find it quite hard having to come to terms with obviously not being able to be at their meets as much and things like that?
So it was like a little bit different. And I would say like pretty much everyone is super understanding and supportive. And I try to set the expectation with like intro calls with like, hey, I am part of PA/IPF. I cannot be at none of those, like anything else outside of that meets. So I set expectations early on so people just know. And then like to help, not be there in person, like initially the biggest challenge was finding handlers and coaches for people on meet day. Like if I can't be at USAPL Nationals, like my lifters need handlers, like someone needs to be there for them. So like I said, networking is like the biggest tool. And I feel like I've been able to network a ton of with other coaches to get my lifters covered on meets where I can't be there, whether it be the federation or timing, things like that. So like financially from a standpoint, not so much, because I've been able to kind of just network more and make sure that lifters are able to have a good quality service if I can't actually be there to handle them.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important. I like that you also mentioned about, being able to find handlers for your lifters as well. So they're not left like trying to do that themselves, and it gives them that security that obviously you've put your trust in someone to help them, which I think will obviously help them as well.
Yeah. It's like, like sometimes, you can't be there for every meet, especially if you're like coaching like a ton of lifters all over the country or your states or wherever. So like just finding whether it's, someone they're comfortable with, like a friend they trust, or it's another, peer you trust, just finding some sort of plan on meet day is usually the best case scenario. And everyone feels like confident going to the meet, which is obviously the biggest priority. Yeah.
No, I really, really like that answer. I think one more coachy question and then we'll start to wrap up. I think I said that already and then I went on a tangent.
It's all right.
With the coaching side, obviously we've kind of said a big thing is continuing to learn. And I wondered, like, you are a coach that like I look up to, and I'm sure a lot of other coaches will look up to as well. Where would you say to coaches to go to help them with learning? Are you someone that more just you network with other people and ask lots of questions? Are there any resources that you would recommend? Anything like that you think's helped you learn along the way?
Yeah. So like, as far as like my resources personally for like me, having like education is one, I just Google shit and see where it takes me. Like just figuring out questions. Like there could be a general question. If you don't know, like, let's say you have knee pain, start with something general and then narrow it down your search engine and just look over like articles, like small things like that. But that's like a general, just an easy way of starting an education process. The second source or resource would be like someone in your like group of friends or coaching group of friends. So like I have group chats where we have a bunch of coaches in there. If I don't know something, I ask it, or I'll message my friends who are also coaches and be like, hey, like how would you approach this like issue that I'm having with a lifter? And just having like those resources, because like not everyone programs the same, rehabs the same, like all coaches are a little bit different. So like just having a group of people that also coach helps a ton. Like there shouldn't be like animosity in the coaching community. There should be like a helpfulness, togetherness, to where if you have a question, all right, here's how I would approach it. How would you approach this? Like that helps me see things through different lenses. And then the last kind of resource for education would be kind of the more formal lens. And when I think about that, I think of Powerlifting Now, obviously. So like subscribing to that, where they make long form content, breaking through very specific, very niche issues, or even just programming specifics. And that's really, really good for, I think, coaches just to dive a little bit deeper and get like a very specific viewpoint on a certain issue in powerlifting. So we have like the general Google search where like, hey, what the fuck is this? You have your friends, your peers, you know, asking for a different lens of viewpoint. And then you have like the kind of like formal education stuff as well too. So there's so much education out there. It's not like I do this every day, but like just getting more knowledge over time has just been super, super helpful.
I think that's a really perfect answer. And I think just for something that I want to link back to as well. So you obviously mentioned very briefly, like, you know, linking in with group chats with other coaches or linking into coaches that you know. I think that's something a lot of people don't realize, how, like you said about how obviously there shouldn't be any animosity between coaches and stuff. And I think it's, at least in my experience, incredibly rare for coaches not to be willing to help you with a question, right? Yeah. Like, and I think when I was younger, as one of the few female coaches at the time in the GB scene kind of thing, and obviously there's a lot more now, which is great, I felt nervous to reach out to a lot of these male coaches. But actually, as soon as I was like, no, just ask, it's so welcoming and helpful. And I think that's something a lot of people like would like to hear, is that actually 99% of coaches, if you reach out and ask them a question, they're probably going to be more than happy to help you.
Yeah. And like, that's just a way to improve, like, I think coaching standard as a whole. And like, I was definitely like super like shy, I would say, when I first started coaching as well too. And didn't really communicate as much or ask as many questions as I do now. But like, I literally like ask my coach Steve like random questions all the time on Instagram. I'll like send him a message, and like even if it's just from like a coaching business perspective, like he's always more than happy to answer. Or if I ask a PT question or someone who has a background in like physical therapy, like they're also just so welcoming and opening to like ask and take a look at things, which I find super, super beneficial as well too. So like people will probably answer your questions. If they don't, it's okay. Like who cares? Whatever.
No, I think that is a good note to end on. But obviously, just before you go, first I want to ask if you have coaching spaces available, and if so, where people can find you, where people can reach you for that.
So I'll probably have spaces available starting at the middle to end of April, just because it's national season. So I'm a little bit busy right now. But if you are interested in powerlifting or an interest in coaching, shoot me an email. It's natalie.plcoaching@gmail.com, or you can find me on Instagram, and I have it linked in my bio.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your time. And if there's anything else you want to shout out that you've got coming up, or sponsors or anything before we end the call?
Shout out to SBD per usual. I'm wearing their shirt. Obviously you can't see it, but thank you, SBD. Again, I have all my affiliates linked in my Instagram bio as well. But yeah, this was a fun chat. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for joining me.